there's a lot of avenues. That's why you have all the cuts in our sidewalks.
Sure, we've got all
How are
the.
they engaged?
So we've got our larger team, which consists of, I think we're up to almost 40 agencies now, all those social service agencies, spanning not just Cincinnati, but also into the tri-state area, Indiana and Kentucky as well. So we've got all of them, all of their networks. And of course, like we mentioned, we'll be reaching out to our friends in marketing to again, push that out to as many channels as we possibly can. So.
But I'm still thinking about the Gaslight or the Nemesis. They need to be at the table
Sure.
to advocate for this.
Absolutely, yep. And all are welcome. So if there are any agencies that are not currently represented, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. If you want to get me the information, we'd be happy to invite them to the team.
I'm not going to say I know, I put my
Sure.
hand on it, but I do know that even at City Hall, the advocates show up.
Sure, absolutely.
Yep. Yeah, so we'll look into. That's, I mean, I think once we get some stuff rolling, we can get a lot of engagement, but they're going to want to be part of the process.
Absolutely.
You said you're behind the scene now. All I can think about is the railway. You're behind the scene now, but when you bring it up, are they going to have some concern?
Sure, absolutely. All right, should we move on to technology? Yep. All right, so if you go forward a couple of slides. So this is kind of where the more difficult but also kind of fun projects are in terms of technology, right? So trying to unify all of these systems together. So we did talk in our last meeting that the initial work in procuring our unified scheduling system has been completed. However, we're still that's the VIA software, by the way, is the vendor that was selected for that. So we're underway in the project to unify agencies that are participating that already have a software in place to be able to talk to the VIA system in a sense. So we're developing what's called middleware. That's funded by I want to make sure I get this right, an EMI grant. It's a federal grant to accomplish that. Here at SORTA, we're working with our partners at Trapeze, as we use Trapeze Pass here for our paratransit services. We're working on them right now with that interface, thank you, between the two systems. It's a little more complicated than one would think, just having two systems with two different types of data going between the two. But that's going to be a key part of that one call center and those agents being able to book rides for multiple jurisdictions, right, cross-jurisdictional rides. That's going to be a key part of that. And again, this middleware software is what's going to allow us to not force any agencies to have to replace what they already have, right? So procuring new software, Trapeze or QRide, whatever it is really expensive and time-consuming. This will allow them to keep that in place. So that's underway right now. And on the next slide, the other huge piece of this is the one call center, which is the most exciting part of this, I think. So we're working, of course, with NeoRide and their partners, which is Arcadis IBI Group. This is also partially funded by an FTA grant. We have a pretty aggressive timeline for this. We're shooting for the design and concept of operations, which you can see the draft is here on the screen, to be completed by next month. And then hopefully testing early in 2024. Of course, there's again, that's all dependent on whether that middleware is in place, it's been tested, it's working between all the different systems. But again, that'll allow our users across multiple agencies, multiple regions, the ability to use that one phone number, one website to book their rides. Yeah.
And remind me, this means, so one call means it goes to one call center?
Correct.
Okay.
So the idea is that if a passenger, just as an example, a passenger already has a ride booked, right?
Yep.
So I'm taking an access trip wherever within the Cincinnati region, and I'm calling to see where that ride is. If I'm a known user of that system, my phone number is already in the database, the system, without even talking to a person, will say, it's an interactive voice response system. Hey, are you calling about the ride you have scheduled? If yes, press 1 or whatever, what have you. And if you want to know where your ride is or your ETA, press 1. Your ride is 5 minutes away. If there's a problem with that ride, hey, my ride hasn't showed up, press this number, whatever it is, it will connect you to a regional call center representative, which will actually be probably here at SORTA for our region. And they can, a human can look into the system and figure out what's going on. And if it cannot be resolved at that level, then it'll go to a local call center, whether that's here or Butler County or Tank. Yeah. So that's the idea.
Yeah, no, I get the idea, and that's just, and that could be for the social service agencies too, not
Correct.
just
Correct.
and this is, back to that where they giving up something to get something here, and
Correct. Yes.
so we'll have to sell them on it.
Yeah, so there would be definitely some either contracts or MOUs or something that are going to have to be put into place as we get further into this. And I know on the next slide, one of the other upcoming projects or upcoming challenges is the cost allocation method, right? So if a SORTA vehicle picks up someone in Butler County and takes them to the airport, how do we cut that cost between Butler County, SORTA, and Tank, right? So we're working on the draft of that now. That's going to be completed, I believe, the end of this month and presented to the team, the paratransit team, next month at their team meeting in November. But that's kind of where that give and take is going to be.
Because it ought to save everybody a little bit of money because you have one vehicle doing the trip as opposed to 3 and handing on.
Exactly.
So I think there's got to be benefit. I know it's going to be harder to convince people of that.
Exactly. Yep. So, of course, we're also working on, we want to pilot those one-seat rides early in 2024, before the middle of the year. Again, that's all dependent on getting the one call center set up, getting the middleware set up. All of those things have to happen. Cost allocation has to be at least almost finalized, if not finalized at that point. And then the other thing we're working on too is the accessibility and wayfinding of transfer hubs. Currently, we're working with UC DAP. They're actually making some prototypes of some boarding signs for SORTA. Once we get those in place, we'll present those to the team as well and figure out, get some insight as to what works best in terms of wayfinding at sites where multiple systems meet.
Yeah.
So.
On these agreements and cost allocations and things, I guess we're going to have contracts with everybody. So get Kim working on these.
I think we would at least have, MOU agreements with folks in terms of cost allocation. We have existing MOUs with other transit systems, like, for example, the cost share for the Metro Tank Pass, right? Those are allocations based on basically our experience with the riders that use those passes. I would imagine something similar with respect to cost share of paratransit trips.
And I think the agencies are probably, or the transit agencies are probably more familiar with it. I think as you get to these other groups, it may be a little trickier. But
Exactly.
Just to clarify, we're talking door-to-door, not door-through-door services.
Correct,
right?
yes.
The door-through-door is where the social service agencies are in there in a big way. The door-to-door, they're involved, but not
so
as
it might get
dramatically.
sent over to them if that's what the person needs, right? The door-through-door? Yeah, so that's part of the expectation on the one call would be, what service do you require? Okay, if it's door-through-door, then these ones won't work for you.
Correct.
Right.
Exactly.
This platform will help distinguish.
That is the idea, yes.
Now, with
Correct.
Quinn's point earlier about, or the point of how you pre-qualify some of these, like there are some advocacy groups that they want to be vetted before we put them on the platform. So like, for example, the elderly population, you have Council on Aging, that will vet a lot of the providers. And some of them are one-off providers, others are for-profit providers that have a different service model than the social service agencies. And this is when it gets to the door-through-door.
Correct.
I don't know that we would want to have everybody on that platform that can provide transportation. We would want somebody to vet those vendors, such as the Council on Aging, if we have them on our platform. Following on that.
So can I maybe try to ask the question in a slightly different way? Are there the partners on the platform are agency partners, or are there private for-profit taxi companies or so on and so forth represented on this committee?
Currently, it's only agencies. No, there are no private.
So the eligibility, the brokering of those trips out to would go through the agency requirement and through the agency process first, as opposed to this just matching rides with maybe a private vendor that hops onto this platform. Is that
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's
You
the
can see
answer.
that being a logical place to go at some point, but
Right.
yeah, baby steps kind of.
Right. A lot of that'll, especially during the pilot phase of this and the testing phase of this, those are all the things that we're going to have to figure out, what's the protocol for that. So there's not a one size fits all for every ride, of course. So hence why it's so challenging. And
But I think Council on Aging, they're involved in some of these
They
meetings,
are,
right?
correct.
So,
Yep.
hopefully, yeah. So that, and I don't know if you have a list somewhere of all the people that are involved in this committee. It's pretty broad.
Correct. Not as part of the presentation, but we do have it. Yes, we have contact information for everyone I can share. Yep. So just a little bit of exciting news on the next couple of slides. So in September of this year, Lisa Alec and I had the opportunity to present this project to the Ohio Needs Transit Conference. Mr. Harris was also part of this virtually. He had recorded a message that we played for the group. And of course, it spurred a lot of conversation, a lot of good questions, a lot of folks taking pictures of our slides because they want to know how this is all working. So it was a really great experience. But the next slide, we're not stopping at the borders of Ohio. We also got to share this out at APTA, down at APTA in Orlando this year. So I had the opportunity to present with NeoRide and Arcadis. This was mostly geared towards the one call center, but of course we shared with them why we were doing this as well. So next we're going international, I think, but we'll see how that goes. And then just to just give you an idea that the work is far from done. These are all of the meetings that are currently scheduled. We are also just confirmed, I believe yesterday or the day before, a few of us will be taking a trip up to SORTA. So they are also going to be the other one call center for Ohio. They've started work on their project, so we're going to go visit them in December. And,
It's called SARTA?
Compare notes.
SARTA?
SARTA. So we have SORTA and SARTA. Stark County in Canton. Yeah. Any other questions you have?
All I would say is, like we've talked about, the hard part starts when people have to compromise. And I think this is an easy thing to get bogged down and letting people sort of slowly veto things. And so use the resources on the board here to help moving things forward. I also think, I don't want to get so far ahead, media-wise, but I do think you start saying, hey, we're trying to find a single ride opportunity. Like, there's so much good here that I think you can create pressure for people to not want to be, where people go, how come you're not part of this, right? As opposed to, what are they doing to me? But
And just the different pots of money that are available through different levies. There's a cross section here, right, for some of these agencies and through our issue 7 monies. So it's an interesting confluence of resources.
And I think we keep the mission is to really provide this community with service they need and deserve and make it easier for folks. It's just a great,
Absolutely.
mission. So.
Well, thank you, Matt. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any more comments? Gwen, do you have any more questions for Matt? Okay, thanks. Lisa, would you like to come to the microphone and give us a state of the access presentation?
Good morning.
Thank you.
Okay, so the ADA was built to be comparable service for Metro. So we already know that we are going to match the service area, the service time, the service days. Nellie, can you move to the next slide, please? But one thing that we need to keep and be mindful of are the travel times, the amount of time that someone spends on a bus. So go ahead and go to the next slide, please. When we're calculating comparable time, this is the time necessary to get to the bus stop. So, for example, if you're riding Metro, getting to the bus stop, waiting for the bus, riding the bus, transferring if you have that transfer and need to go to another bus, and then travel to the final stop to the ultimate destination. So that includes walking on both sides, any wait time at the bus stop. All of that's taken into consideration when we're looking at comparability. Next slide. So this is, sorry. There we go. So this is very small, and I'm sorry, you're gonna have to really squint to see some of these times. But this is a comparable comparison of a trip that's going from a workshop that's over in Mount Healthy to an apartment residence that is on Kemper Road in Forest Park. And then Nellie, if you scroll to the right a little bit. So on Metro, that would take about an hour and 50 minutes or even possibly up to 2 hours and 20 minutes. On Access, we've been average about 25 minutes for this particular customer. So we're doing a pretty good job for him or her. And that's because as you know, we don't have a lot of good crosstown service. So this individual has to actually go all the way from Mount Healthy, downtown, transfer, and then back out to Forest Park. There it is. You can see on the left on that map, that route that someone would take on a Metro bus. Where it is even in a car, 25 minutes is probably pretty reasonable in terms of comparison. Okay, we can go to the next slide. This is comparability of a trip that's going from like the Museum Center on the west end out to Fairfax. This is a trip that might take about an hour on regular Metro service. And then we're averaging for this customer about 36.5 minutes. And then the next. And here's an example of someone going from Eastern Avenue, Columbia, Tusculum area, over to Norwood. You can see that trip can range anywhere from an hour and 13 minutes to hour and 14 minutes. We're doing that same trip in about 25 minutes. Any questions on comparability?
No, I guess that the requirement is you have to provide comparable service, and so.
Yeah.
And you showed us examples where we're doing better. I'm sure there's examples where we're a little.
Oh,
bit
sure, yeah, sure. I couldn't find any. I worked really hard. I couldn't find any.
Well, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, there are times, of course, rain, traffic, those kinds of things always are problems for us that can impact comparability. There's also a 30-minute pickup window. Some people do calculate that into the times. Sometimes we pick them up at the beginning of the window, which then reduces their time that they're waiting and traveling. So, that all of that can be taken into consideration depending on how you're looking at it.
So what's our average time?
Average travel time? That's a good question. I don't know. We've got a lot of crosstown trips that I would call them wonky. They don't really fit well, so they tend to zigzag across the city because to be efficient and to have it as a shared service, they don't make a lot of sense to passengers sometimes. But we do run in the background a check. The Trapeze does a Google Maps check to make sure that it still falls into what would be comparable and reasonable for that trip. There is a lot of question from customers about whether this is comparable. If we're going from downtown to, let's say, Glenway Avenue before they might head somewhere else, that doesn't seem like that's making sense to them. It's going out of the way. But we take into consider other people who are also traveling from that area. We try to do the best we can to make that efficient. And I'll get to this a little bit later about why our efficiency has dropped down a little bit. But any more questions on comparability, though?
30 minutes is the amount of time we allot for us to get to that person? The window?
So there's a 30-minute pickup window. When you make your reservation, you're given a 30-minute window, so access will arrive somewhere in that 30 minutes. And we ask them to be ready at the beginning of the window and prepared to travel. So, code is on, you've gone to the bathroom, lunch is packed, you're ready to walk out the door when we get there. We only wait 5 minutes before we have to move on to the next customer.
5 minutes, okay.
Yeah.
And do we establish that guideline, or is that established by somebody else? Did we, SORTA, establish the 30-minute window?
We did establish it, but that's pretty in line with what other agencies are using.
Okay.
Some people have it down to 20 minutes. 30 minutes is usually, we try to hit right in the center of that. So if you have a 12 to 12:30 pickup, we're shooting for 12:15.
Got it, okay.
Do the driver actually assist the customer?
If they request it, we will assist them from the door to the bus and then from the bus to the door of their,
Calculated it that
yeah.
travel time.
So, and that, well, not always. Sometimes they request that at the pickup or at the drop-off, and that can delay us a little bit. That's why we need that little bit of a cushion with that 30-minute window. Okay, next slide, please. So this is just a quick snapshot of where we've been in the last couple of years, going back pre-COVID, where we are comparing what it looks like, ridership and productivity. You can see comparatively, we're nearly what we were pre-COVID. Access service dropped off significantly because a lot of agencies were closed. Dialysis kept their doors open, but some of those other places stopped serving people during those periods. So we saw a significant drop. And but you can see, like, just for projections, we're nearly what we were pre-COVID. Now, when you look at this is scheduled trips. These aren't taken trips. There's a difference. That's what people schedule, and what actually happens the day of. That's what we're preparing for, is the scheduled trips. The day of, we call those taken trips because we get cancellations, no-shows, things like that. But in order to balance, Natalie, can you go to the next slide, please?
Guys, just on time, does that mean you're picked up within that 30 minutes window? That's what that
Yes,
means?
and dropped off at your requested time.
Okay.
So in order to have a high quality of service for our customers, we need to balance on-time performance with productivity. Typically, when you have a high on-time performance, that's where the buses just aren't as full. We're getting you to and from really quickly. But that means usually productivity is low. If productivity is high, that means our buses are crowded and people are waiting longer, trips are longer. And so we have to work really hard in balancing on-time performance with productivity. So some of the things that can affect both of those are vehicle availability, driver recruitment and retention. As you all know, we went through a hiring spurt. I can't even call it a spurt. It's been nearly a year where we've been onboarding. We have nearly 50 new people. We're over 100 now, but we started with about 60, so almost twice what we had a year ago. And they're all new, so they're still learning the city. They're learning the feel of the vehicle. They're learning our customers. So it's been a pretty large learning curve. We've also had an increase in demand just after COVID, like I mentioned earlier. Our service hours have grown to keeping pace with Metro and even our service area. So now we're going all the way out into the further parts of the county. There are trips that are in Sharonville, up in the Fields Erdel and Mason area, not quite Mason, Deerfield, and the customer demand and what their expectations of us are.
And I guess as we have better, more timely fixed route service, the pressure to have comparable goes up too then.
Sure,
right? So.
yeah. We're in areas now that we've never been before, and where customers we've had to turn down in the past are now able to get access to us. So we've seen some growth just in the population, but also in new customers, not like return customers.
Yeah.
They're new to us.
And one of the other things that we've discussed with the board and is happening behind the scenes is that in those Metro Now zones, if there are access customers that whose trip typically begins and ends within one of those zones, we're trying to encourage those folks to use Metro Now, because it's in terms of the service characteristics, how long in advance you have to schedule, how long you typically have to wait, how direct the service is, the cost. It's all a bonus to them, made possible by the technology of the on-demand, platform. So it'll be interesting to see over the years as more zones come online, how many more access customers travel within their zone.
I know we asked about if we knew how many of those trips were happening. We didn't have the answer last time.
I don't know that we had that data yet.
I think they're working on that. We did do a targeted mailing to access customers who live in those zones.
Yeah.
And we just looked at a few of the corridors to see if we couldn't adjust them just a little bit. For example, it goes straight down Hamilton Avenue, which I guess that is the west side of Hamilton is included, but the east side isn't, which prevents anyone who lives in that area getting to Clovernook. So those are one of the discussions that we were having, and maybe modifying those boundaries to be able to be a little more inclusive. There's a large population of people with visual impairments who live in the Bising area, which is just really literally across the street. And Access does a lot of trips for people who simply are going across Hamilton Avenue. And Metro Now would be like a dream for them because they could get up and go. Visually impaired people are usually pretty tech savvy, so they won't have any difficulty with using the app. And it's half the price in using Access.
Yep.
So there's a lot of reason to make that move if you're able to.
Craig, we looked into the use of mobility devices on the Metro Now trips. Now, not every Access rider uses a mobility device, but just a snapshot of that population. It's in the single digits on a daily basis. So to put that together with what Lisa is seeing, where the Access activity is, there's a lot of fruit there to market Metro Now to that demographic, no doubt.
Yeah, no, and I think the thing for me in this space is always, and I appreciate the efficiency needs and all those things, right? I really do, and I don't want to waste money, but I think this is such this population needs a lot of support, and I do as a board, because I know you're doing all the things you're supposed to do, right? As a board, we got to keep thinking about: are we providing the service? Are we investing enough in the service that the community needs, or people, it's never going to be perfect, like having your own car, but I think we got to keep thinking about that. Do we need to invest more to make it a better service? And my guess is the more you invest, the more riders you get to, just like the regular buses. So it's an interesting trade-off for sure.
Well, and Access isn't going to meet everyone's needs, right. So maybe Metro Now can fill those voids that people have. That because there's no spontaneous travel on Access. Unfortunately, there's just no way.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah.
But I think as we talk about this paratransit committee and all these different things, what may become, this is going to sound worse than it's supposed to sound. Is Access becomes the one of last choice because it has the most restrictions.
We do a lot of good work.
I mean, that's okay if they're the safety net. But I think as we keep thinking about all this, right, how do we really provide service that folks, helps them, engage in the community better?
But it feels like that within our network, that's the opportunity of last resort. But there's an entire other network of providers that, and this is where the paratransit and the through-the-door categories, that line gets blurred, I think. You would know better than me. But we go up to that level, the paratransit. Then beyond that level, there are service providers that are truly caretakers and social workers.
But that's what I was saying, that I think of all those things, Access becomes the one of last resort because it's not as,
I see.
It's not as customized to your needs.
Last resort within the Metro network of providers.
With all
the higher
all
priority
of them.
would be if we put them toward the social service agencies that actually provide that prompt and make the dialysis appointment, guarantee the dialysis appointment is made, things of that nature, and the delays are expected. You're going to have a delay of somebody coming through the door, right? That's not the paratransit exactly, so I'm going into another category. But the coordination part, I can see how that would be so complicated for us to play a part in.
Donna, who's on our eligibility team, she's taking the mobility management course through Easter Seals, and she's already even in conjunction and prior to and alongside of our efforts as a larger entity, she has collected a lot of resources for people. So when they call and they say, this is what I need, she can spin through that and say, while we might not be able to fill that need, here are some numbers of places that might. And if she might say, do you have insurance? If they don't have insurance, she goes this route. If they do, maybe this other one.
Yeah.
So she's been a very useful help to people who call and they're at their wits' end and Metro's just not working for them for whatever reason. She can offer a lot of guidance and support there.
And I do think that, awareness of what's available in the community, all those things tie together. So that's why this presentation and before it really do tie together to how do you find the right resources if they already exist, and then do we have to do anything with what we're doing? Because you've heard me say that. My fear with Metro Now is if we, we're going to start finding out, we don't have enough service out there, right? If the one person that appears to be using it every day, right? The 31 trips to whatever that one street was. If more people figure that out, you're going to need a bunch more buses, right? Or vans. But I think that's great. That means there's a demand in the community. How do we meet it? But it's awesome. So,
Okay, let's move to the next slide, please.
sorry, I get excited about it.
So just a quick snapshot of today versus where we were 3 years ago. Now this, and I mentioned before that we have nearly 50 new employees. That was total with maintenance, scheduling, dispatcher, and everything. But we are from 64 drivers to 71, where we had 59 vehicles. We now have 50. So we're doing more with less, and it's been a struggle.
Yeah. Does this include the Metro Now stuff, or that's separate?
No, it doesn't.
Because the operator community is the same, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, yes, they are. They all come out of Access. Yes.
Okay.
So even in 2020, when we had COVID-19 and reduced ridership, we are now 24-hour service and an expanded service area. So we're doing so much with less than what we did before. The only thing that has, that we've seen an increase, we've seen a decrease in the number of vehicles, but an increase in everything else. So we've really struggled to keep up with that. So that's why you've seen some dips in the on-time performance. That can be related to just the lack of vehicles and the new drivers and just the learning curve and not understanding the city yet. So we've seen some significant changes over the last few years.
Can I ask one more question on time performance? When you say it's the requested drop-off time, so they say I need to be at Clover Nook at 10 a.m., and we work backwards from then for their pickup
Yeah.
time?
So if you say you want to be there at 10 o'clock, we put that in, and then Trapeze looks at historical information and then pops out a couple of solutions which might work for the person. And depending on how close if they need to go tomorrow, the options maybe aren't going to be as good as what they would be if it was going to be next Thursday. But Trapeze pops out a couple of solutions and might say, we can offer an 8:15 to 8:45 to get them to there by 10 o'clock. Yeah. They'll probably get there more like 9:30, depending on where they're coming from, how long the trip's going to be. But Trapeze takes all of that into consideration.
Works backwards. Okay.
Yeah. Everything that's already scheduled, any historical information, where they live. Okay, next slide, please. So these are some of the things that we have to look forward to. We've got new and additional vehicles on order, which is going to be huge for us. They're going to be very similar in size and shape as the Metro Now. They're a little bigger, capacity is a little higher, but they do have that a low floor, so there won't be steps, and the ramp will be manual, so it's not as likely to go down or cause any mechanical interruptions. We'll have the regional paratransit call center that Matt spoke of before, and then we are introducing some new technology that we're hoping by the end of first quarter we'll have in place. One of the things that is already in high demand is imminent arrival, which is a system that texts or calls the customer to say we're 5 minutes away. And that is, everybody has been asking for that for so long, and our system just wouldn't allow it. We just upgraded to 21, so now we're at the point where we can start adding these better features that are going to be nice for everybody, so that they don't have to worry about looking and waiting and standing for 30 minutes for a bus to come, or if they know it's 5 or 7 minutes away, they can head outside then. We'll also have Easy Wallet, which allows people to kind of put some money in a bank in their Easy Wallet, and as they take the trip, it deducts the cost of the trip. They don't have to worry. We don't have to supply tickets. They don't have to buy them. They don't have to manage them. That's going to be very helpful with just budgeting and managing fares. Mm-hmm. It's going to help on like the administrative side with counting those fares. We're still very largely manual because we don't have fare boxes on the access vehicles, so we're collecting everything by hand. So it'll decrease the vulnerability of the drivers. And then we'll have a web app access for customers so that they can make, change, or cancel their reservations on their own. So everyone's looking forward to that as well. A lot of good things coming down the road for access. Does anyone have any questions?
No, thanks. That's a good summary. Appreciate it, Lisa.
Great, sure.
That's good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. We want to get you more resources now.
Yeah. Matt, I got a question that kind of goes back to, I think, the transportation coordination part, just so I have my head around it. So for this I'm focused on this door-through-door
You
population.
need to talk a little louder, they say.
I'm focused on the door-through-door population, right? And the social service agencies and the various providers. Is that 52, is that Transportation 52 group part of this
Home 52, yes, they are.
Home 52?
Yeah.
And Council on Aging, Nan Cahall, is she involved with these meetings?
I know Council on Aging is. I'm not sure who the representative is.
Might
but
be
I-
Suzanne Burke, but either one of those.
Is it? Is it Brian Black? Yes. Brian Black.
Okay. So in this group that you're working with, if you predetermine that this individual is a through the door client, customer of ours, we'll channel them over to Council on Aging to work through their network of providers that are more social service oriented than strictly transportation oriented.
Sure, that's one option, right? I think I think the idea is to get all of those. Council on Aging is probably not the only one that provides those type of services.
No, they're
so
not.
kind of getting that pool of all of those providers together, and the system being able to broker those trips accordingly, right? Which one?
So
makes
all
more
those
sense for them.
providers, some of them are pre-qualified by Council on Aging, and the other ones are specifically not preferred by Council on Aging. And it reflects poorly on Council on Aging if they have bad timely results and bad service offerings, and that's what I'm concerned about.
Right, but again, they're not sending it to some new person that hasn't, they're sending it to the Council on Aging coordination, right?
That's what I'm asking.
So I'll have to double check on exactly the workflow on that. But the idea is that all of those things would be unified, right? So the pool of folks who are using the service that are pre-qualified would all be in one database, so that you would know that they are pre-qualified for
Okay.
whatever type of service it is, and therefore they could use whichever provider is providing that type of service.
And I think this is sort of, if you take it a step above, it's even, right now, the transit agencies don't all agree on who's certified and how to certify you to even use paratransit. Just as an individual,
Right.
Much less the who's providing the service at the end. So I think there's a lot of these type of things. This is what I was talking about. It sounds simple, but when everybody has different rules, how do you?
I think it
coordinate
sounds really complex. And no, I'm
But so we
deeply
would not
involved
be
with
introducing new service providers unless it's come through one
But
of the agencies.
access to a host of service providers that are not pre-qualified is my concern for us.
But no, why do you keep? I don't know why you keep saying you think they're not pre-qualified.
Well, because that was really the question: was are these running through Council on Aging, or is it Council on Aging and a network of other providers? And that's really what I'm driving at.
Right.
The
So they'd be
for-profit providers versus the nonprofit.
They would have been provided by one of the participants in the group,
Correct.
right? So then you got to figure out, as we're saying, if you're authorized through one pool of users but not through another, then the system will have to figure out how to pick that up. But so we're not providing any new ones ourselves, right?
So just a little clarity, though. The idea is we're kind of starting with paratransit, right? So it's the regional paratransit coordination. So essentially, the 6 agencies that provide, per definition of ADA, paratransit services. That's kind of where we're starting, right? We know there's a need for folks in Butler County to get to the airport. We know there's folks in Kentucky that are trying to get to the VA on paratransit, right? So that's kind of the starting point. Is okay. Let's get those 6 together. Make sure that our eligibility matches, then you can ride any of those 6, right? I think the long-term vision is exactly what you're saying, is those who have bigger needs or additional needs that we don't currently provide accommodations for, to get those also into the system. I think that's kind of a little bit further down the road, but we're kind of starting with paratransit as a
But those
first
groups are
step.
part of these discussions, so
Correct.
we're not building
Yes.
anything that would prohibit them from being involved.
Correct.
But these are the kind of things, obviously, there's a lot of complication there. And I think it might be interesting for you to come to one of the meetings, right, to see what's being discussed, but I think it's more than fair. But I always say we have no intention of saying, hey, we're going to add some agencies that or some providers that aren't doing any of this through one of our partners.
Uber is not part of the conversation.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I understand less what you're asking, but more, I do understand your answer. I'm sorry, but like, I'm glad that the COA is at the table with these
Right.
discussions, so that the through the door aspect is fully considered, and that there aren't providers outside of their pre-qualified providers in that network.
Yeah.
That would be my concern. If
Right.
we, again, like if we become a yellow pages for transportation services, that would be a detriment.
Yeah,
for the through the door.
that's what I'm saying. That's not what I believe we're trying to do. We're trying to work through all these other agencies to say, however, you're providing the service, if you can't meet somebody's needs, or if there's somebody else that calls in that didn't know it was even available, how do we get it back to the right group?
Yeah, that's right. Okay, thanks, Matt.
No problem.
Okay, Gwen, how you doing down there? Good. So, do we have any further business to discuss?
Sounds like you and I do, but we'll get it figured.
You and I do, but
So for my own understanding, we're almost creating a total new system, our network.
We're creating a coordination of activities and finding it that what we're creating network wise, I guess technology wise, is having a single place to go, right? And I think, but the biggest deal, like what he was talking about first, was today the paratransit agencies don't coordinate what they're doing. They hand off people within their own parameters, right? So back to this half-hour window, I hate to sort of dwell on it, but if I have to go across the river and somebody's a half hour early and somebody's a half hour late, what does the passenger do, right? Because they're stuck. So yeah, those are real scenarios, right? So I think we have to, I think it's been easy in the industry to think about what are the minimum requirements we have to make this work for each agency. And I don't know that it's ended up having the best service for the passengers. And not because of anybody's trying to do anything wrong. I think it's a industry of people trying to do great things for folks. But the rules make it harder, and I think partly because we've had limited resources, it's sort of forced you into making choices that aren't always the best, And I don't want people in the region to say, well, I have to suffer because, Hamilton County and Northern Kentucky have different agencies, so I have to, my life's harder, and I think we should try to avoid that if we can.
Yeah, because there's different eligibilities. I mean, it could be income eligibility, it could be age, it's just even where you live. I mean, just so many different service providers have different
Sure.
rules or
so it's
areas.
for the
So I was just-
paratransit population. This transit coordination effort is exciting, right? And that's what we're rolling out here.
Yeah.
It's the other coordination that's a different aspect that I was bringing up.
Yeah, we'll get
earlier.
there. But I think even the paratransit, right? Different agencies have different rules.
They have different rules.
And I think
and so that's what I was hearing.
it's unfortunate because it's set us up to try to eliminate folks that,
Right.
I would rather us have somebody, maybe one person that shouldn't be riding, than having somebody that should be able to be excluded, right?
And the one statement that was made that hurts me, I'm a social service guru, right? And the one statement that was said that bothered me is that, and it's not a negative, it's not an indictment, but when you said that Easter Seals will go through and give them 4 of the numbers that they could call if they couldn't get to one. And that's one thing that that irritates me, is that I got to call all these different numbers just to get an answer. So I'm hoping that that coordination is really working where I don't have to. Do you have a piece of paper and take all these numbers
and I
down?
think the reality today is they call and the answer they get is, oh, we can't do it for you.
Right.
Hang up,
So
right?
I'm
So
hoping we-
so even saying here's somebody that could provide that service is moving in the right
But
direction.
I'm hoping that not only.
But it's not where we want to stop.
Right. I'm just hoping that person is able. Let me make a call. Let me see if this is the right agency, because I've gotten that experience. I've had that experience where they're giving me numbers, and they say, well, you don't qualify for that, or no, we don't do that. I don't even know why you got this number.
Yeah,
And so that frustration.
sure. So, but you got to remember where we are
I know.
and where we're trying to get to. So today we don't have a team whose job
I
is to
know,
find
this
somebody
is-
where to ride, but we want
I
to get there.
applaud you for
Well, and she's actually
reduce the number of phone calls that people are
Yeah.
making to help with efficiency, and it does give, maybe reduce some of the frustration that people are feeling when they're trying to find transportation for themselves or a family member.
Right.
Yeah, so she's been a good resource for that.
Thank you. I mean, that's where you want to be.
Yep. It's just far from where we started.
And it's funny, you only have to have one experience. That's not, not good, and you indict the whole system.
Sure.
you
So I
dealt
mean,
with
the danger
everybody.
is, right, you start trying to do something
Yeah.
that's better for folks, and while
Yeah.
you're figuring it out,
You
you
dealt
do
with the
something
whole
that's worse. But
system.
but for sure. So,
Yeah.
all right, we got to wrap up.
So we've come a long way. All right. Well, thank you all for being here.